So after Sonic 3 and Knuckles, that was kind of the end of the mainline series for a while. There would be some spin-off games such as Sonic 3D Blast and Knuckles Chaotix, but Sonic wouldn't really have a presence on the next Sega system, the Sega Saturn. Well, outside of Sonic R, but even then, that's a spin-off. In fact, the next mainline game in the series wouldn't be till Sonic Adventure in 1999 with the series' proper jump to 3D. Not to say that there wasn't any 2D Sonic action. There was plenty of handheld action, including the Game Gear titles, the Advance, Rush, and Rival series. There's a lot of games in this franchise, guys, oh my god. But 2D action didn't really return to consoles for a long time. The closest would be the 2D sections found in Sonic Unleashed. But on September 8, 2009, Sega revealed something codenamed Project Needle Mouse, and later on February 4th, 2010, that game was revealed to be Sonic the Hedgehog 4, though the reins would be handed over to Dimps, the ones responsible for the Sonic Advance and Rush series. The idea was that Sega at this time was starting to notice a bit more of a divide between their younger audience with the more modern titles and their classic fans with the Genesis titles. So the plan was to start catering to both, and I think we know how that song and dance tends to go. Though there's some signs showing that this game was originally planned to be a smartphone-only adventure, and Sega decided to rebrand it to Sonic 4 once the project was set to be on consoles. And oh boy, did that name change leave some big shoes to fill. Episode 2 was released on May 15th, 2012. Yeah, 2 years later and after Sonic Generations, which was already a throwback game with the inclusion of classic Sonic. But this episode was only released on HD systems, not the Wii at all. However, sales-wise, this one didn't fare that well, mainly because that whole honeymoon phase with the original game was done, and most of the problems with it were clear as day. Many saw this as more of the same and didn't bother with it, which is why episode 3 was later scrapped, so these 2 episodes are all we have for this adventure. You know the game is automatically trying to play on the nostalgia bay. As soon as you boot the game up, you got that classic just like in the style of Sonic 1 and 2 respectively. Though poor Tails on this title screen, he looks like he's in constant pain. You might want to get the word out on that one. I should also mention that the mobile version of episode 1 has 2 exclusive levels to that version. One's just a bingo card table, and one's a minecart stage. Yeah, you're not really missing much by skipping these. Now I did play episode 1 back when it first came out, but not episode 2, so I'm going to be playing that for the first time today. And yeah, I know these 2 are separate games, but honestly, it's easier to collectively review them together, like how I did with Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So the plot for episode 1 is super simple. Eggman survives his last encounter with Sonic and wants to retool his older machines to take him down. Short and to the point, it doesn't work and the Doctor is beaten again. Between the 2 episodes, Metal Sonic is revived, and in episode 2, Sonic and Tails go to stop Eggman from using the Death Egg Mark II. Like I said, it's extremely simple, and there's a cutscene here and there, but not much else to the plot, so let's dive into the presentation. So presentation can change a lot depending on which game we're talking about, so let's start with episode 1 and yeah, graphically this is not aged well at all. It tries to do a pre-rendered look kinda similar to say Donkey Kong Country, but it looks rough in HD. Especially noticeable on Sonic himself, he just doesn't look right at all. And I'm not talking about them using his modern design. More like he looks even more made of plastic than he did in Sonic Heroes. And environments never really amaze either, and I can kinda see the seams of how each level was made per se. Like, I can see all the edges of the PNGs that were made to make the level. However, episode 2 does have it a bit better. For one, they decide to go full 3D, and as such, it has aged a lot better. Sonic and Tails look like how I expect them to, animations are much more smooth, and some of the stages like Sylvania Castle and Sky Fortress Zone, in particular Act 3, can really impress. The game is able to take advantage of lighting a lot more, and I think the levels look better because of that. However, something both games suffer from, their soundtracks. Both games were composed by Jun Senoue, who has been a long-time composer for the series, probably most famous for Sonic 3D Blast, the Adventure series, and being the guitarist for Crush 40. And normally I'm a big fan of his work, but here, not so much. A lot of the tracks are really short and repetitive, and not many have strong melodies or are that catchy. And I guess in an attempt to make it more sound like the Genesis, the instruments were made to be more twangy. But this just sounds a lot like the Genesis games that didn't use the sound cart right, which the Sonic series was able to avoid for years. Mad Gear Zone being my prime example. Honestly, it kind of hurts to listen to, which is a shame for Sonic. Not to say every track is bad, Splash Hill is alright and Casino Street Act 2 is pretty chill, and the pinch music for the Eggman fights does have some good tension for the final hit, until they use it for the entire final zone. Seriously, you can tell this song was not meant to be looped that long. But I gotta mention, I'm not big on the special stage theme. It feels more like I'm putting a baby to sleep rather than getting an all-powerful Chaos Emerald. Especially noticeable when you get a 1-up because the sound balance isn't quite right, so in a special stage it's like, go to sleep, dear little child, drift off now to bed. Yo, you got a 1-up, let's go! Unfortunately for episode 2, I think the problems are only accentuated. The instruments sound even worse this time, like doubling down on trying to make it sound like the Genesis, and as such, the tracks just don't sound good to listen to. The tracks are even shorter and get used a lot more, like Eggman's pitch music is now the entire boss theme. Which, yeah, that gets old in no time. The special stage music, honestly, I had to turn off by the end because I was growing sick of it, but more on that later. And Oil Desert Act 2 and 3, just listen to this. Is that really the first impression you want to start the level with? So overall, while graphically episode 2 looks pretty good, the presentation as a whole for both titles is honestly pretty lacking. Maybe the gameplay can pick up the slack? Maybe? Sonic 4 is mostly like the days of old. Speed through a stage and reach the signpost at the end, though each episode only has 4 zones with 3 acts each. And while the game gives you the option to play them in any order you want, as you can hop between zones at your own leisure, you will need to beat all 3 acts in order to reach the boss of a zone to clear it. Sonic can do his classic spin dash, but new to his arsenal is the homing attack from the Sonic Adventure series, where he can lock onto enemies and use them to boost his way up to new paths and such. Meanwhile, in episode 2, with Tails by his side, he can perform tag actions. Like when you're in the air, you can have Tails carry you like Sonic 3, or having him control you like a submarine when you're in the water, or let you spin and roll in a direction to gain speed. Can't you two, like, do that normally? There's also this thing where you can hit a specific box and they just kinda go crazy and screen nuke everything. It's there. But speaking of boxes, there's only the classic shield this time that comes back, no elemental shields from Sonic 3, and you don't find giant rings to go into special stages either. Instead, it's back to how it was in Sonic 1, where you need to keep 50 rings until the end and jump into the giant ring. In episode 1, the special stages are like the ones from Sonic 1, except there's a time limit that you can extend by picking up extenders and collect rings to get through gates to get to an emerald. Though instead of controlling Sonic, you're rotating the stage itself. In episode 2, it's the return of the half-pipe, where you have a ring threshold to get to before a specific checkpoint. You got springs to take you to new areas, time rings where you need to collect them all in order to get a bonus, and a tether connecting you where you can get all the rings between players. Just keep in mind, in both games you can only get 1 emerald for each act, so you can't go back to level 1 and just farm for all 7 emeralds. But if you do get all 7, you can go Supersonic once again. But they don't really change the ending for either game if you were curious. But speaking of both games, if you have them both on the same system, you can play Episode Metal, where you can control Metal Sonic in 4 levels from Episode 1, with slightly changed up level design. That's about it. Also, Episode 2 has both online and offline co-op, where most of it is one player's ahead for the entire time. It's there. Anyway, that's about it for the gameplay in Sonic 4. So what were the things to do right? Look, I think you know how things are gonna go down in a bit, but I do want to give credit to the things that I did like. It is a little bit more prevalent in episode 1, but I like how they try and make every act different from the other ones, which does help each individual level in a zone have its own identity. Something that the classic series did struggle with looking back, as every act in a zone was relatively the same. Take Casino Street in this game for an example. Act 1, Neon City, plays as a typical casino level, but in Act 2, Road of Cards, you run past these cards that if you get 3 matches, they will net you new items, and you have this cool card stack run animation. And in Act 3, Casino Climax, oh my. It revolves around using these cans to progress through the level. Seriously, Casino Climax? That just sounds like something ripped out of Bayonetta. And now I'm waiting for Bayonetta 3 to come out even more. I also like the special stages in episode 1. Yeah, it's basically the same as Sonic 1's, but the time limit actually works out pretty well, and the control scheme makes me like them a bit more, especially because I can see where I'm going and it makes me feel more in control this time. Plus, each of the stages does feel different enough, so it helps in the variety. The only thing I'm not a big fan of are the bumpers, because they just catapult you in here, and in stages like 4 and 7, it's not a pleasant time. but those are the exception rather than the rule. Plus, using Super Sonic is a great time. This was actually the first time in years we got to use him outside the final boss, so I'll give them credit for bringing it back. And unlike previously, you can now activate him with a separate button. I really like that. That way I'm not activating him when I didn't mean to. And I do like the team-up mechanic in episode 2. I mean, the rolling ball one does feel redundant to me, and the underwater one is alright, but it's Tails' flight that's the real showstopper. I really like how you don't need a second controller to do this anymore. The level design has parts built around this concept, and you can take some fun shortcuts and paths when you really know how to get the most out of this thing. And saving yourself from falling with this, that honestly might be the best feeling I got from this whole package. Which, alright, let's get into the problems. So, why is it that no one really brings up Sonic 4 in a good light? Well, let's start going down the list. For one, it's how much this game borrows from other titles. Not just from Sonic 1, but even more so with Sonic 2 with, say, the special stage and boss fights. But also in terms of the levels. I mean, you have Green Hill, Casino Night, Labyrinth, Metropolis, Ice Mountain from Sonic Advance, and Sky Park from Sonic Rivals, which was really evident after playing it for the collab I did with Garrulous, card up there if you want to check it out. Oil Ocean and Wing Fortress. Sylvania Castle was the only one that kind of feels like its own level, but even then it's a pretty basic water level. And while there are a few new gimmicks here and there, they feel so much like their original zones without much to really make them stand out and don't feel as fun as their original zones. Especially thanks to the level design taking a major step back. Alternate paths are a thing, but it's nothing more than just a shield or some rings, so I'm not really incentivized to go out of my way to look for secrets. Episode 2 does have these red rings from Sonic Colors and Generations, one in each stage, except they don't do anything outside of one achievement, so why bother collecting them? At least in the games I mentioned, they unlock bonus levels, new moves, or concept art, and finding 1-ups in this game isn't really a big deal because the game just showers you in them. You get another life almost every few seconds. The game has 3 numbers on that life count for a reason. The level design also suffers a lot from automation. The amount of times I counted where I could just hold right and jump here and there to beat a level, it borderline on frustrating. Even doing that, I was able to hold on to 50 rings by the end, so what's the real fun and challenge in a level then? Especially because the game goes so overboard with springs and speed boosters that go into one another, that makes the level have a lot less flow. Like, look how much I'm instinctively trying to go the other way. I think that says a lot. Back in other titles, speed was a reward for playing well, which felt great to let the physics engine go to town. Here, it feels like a glorified loading screen that really got on my nerves when you see the amount of them in a row. And not really helping that is Sonic's control and physics. Oh boy, it's time. So Dimps built this game off of their engine that they used for Sonic Rush, where Sonic was a bit more floaty and stops more right as you let go of the button. But most of that game had you using the boost mechanic, so that type of control scheme made more sense there. But when you try and put that into a classic-styled Sonic game, it creates a slew of new problems. One of the biggest being that the spin dash and rolling aren't really good means to gain speed, as you'll stop only a little bit after each. Like, look here, I'm rolling down a slope and I start to slow down. That's not how it's supposed to work. The best way to gain speed in this game is to use the homing attack dash a few times in the air, because the other methods won't cut it, which makes hills and loops that were once staples of Sonic level design feel clunky and unresponsive. Not to mention that the Badnik bounce isn't really reliable, and Sonic won't curl up into a ball in the air, meaning that he will get hit by obstacles just out of your line of sight when it happens. Getting hit by a Badnik I couldn't see coming happened so many times throughout both adventures, it got obnoxious, and about 80% of those hits did not feel like my fault at all. Especially when the homing attack itself is unreliable. Sometimes I will properly lock on, and sometimes I'll end up just doing a dash instead. Or somehow still get hit? What? Because of these changes, Sonic's lack of control removes a lot of the inherent fun of classic Sonic gameplay, so what you're left is with a weird Frankenstein of a game. And to get into more episodic stuff, while I did find fun in Episode 1 special stages, Episode 2, oh boy, oh yeah. Okay. First off, Sonic, how did you lose the emeralds in between episodes? It's never explained. And why can't I bring them over from episode 1 like with some kind of lock-on? These games are shorter than other classic Sonic games, and 3 and K already was a thing, so But to get back to the stages themselves, I wasn't a fan of the half pipe in 2, and it's for a lot of the same reasons here. It leans too much on memorization, goes on for a long time, and it feels like you have to put in more work than necessary for an emerald. Especially with stage 7. This one has it all. Super tight movement, obstacles you can't see until they're right in front of you, one and done attempts with special rings where if you miss even one you don't get a bonus, and what makes it even worse for me is that the control feels like there's a bit of delay between your inputs and Sonic and Tails reacting, which makes timing even harder. Especially with Tails and this connect beam, where you need to think about both the delay for you and Tails to collect the special rings that I mentioned. And that made this final stage honestly my least favorite in the entire franchise, to the point where I don't think I will ever attempt to do it again if I play this game after this. What kind of makes it even worse is Super Sonic in Episode 2 is actually pretty underwhelming, because you're forced out of it anytime you do a team-up move. And with the ending not really changing, he's just not worth the pain to get it. Thankfully, in both episodes, if you pause before you exit the stage or reach a checkpoint, you can retry the special stage, but I had to play Special Stage 7 so many times, to the point where the song is stuck in my head for all the wrong reasons and it won't leave. Get out of my life! You remember how in Sonic 2 it took me a lot more time to get the emeralds than to beat the game? 30 minutes! On just Special Stage 7. Not playing other levels to get to the stage, no. Just the minute-and-a-half long stage on repeat. Yeah, no, don't go for Super Sonic, he's just not worth it in Episode 2. On a side note, Episode Metal is pretty lame. 4 stages, barely any different from the ones in Episode 1. Metal doesn't play any different. It's not really worth your time and nothing like Sonic 2 Knuckles mode. Bosses in both episodes aren't really great either. Most in Episode 1 are ripped right from their original zones, and I'm not a big fan of the Ruins one because it takes a long time. Mad Gears is okay, it reminds me a lot of Sonic Advance 2 where you need to keep fighting the boss while running, but the final boss is just Death Egg Robot from Sonic 2 with some new attacks, that's about it. In Episode 2, okay, the first Metal Sonic I think is actually better than the CD race. I'll give compliments where I can, but every other boss is a complete mess. Mainly because they go on for way too long, and some have some really questionable hitboxes and tells, making the fights go on even longer. Oil Deserts in particular drags out for how long this boss takes, and the final boss, 80% is unskippable cutscenes, rather than actually fighting him. They're not fulfilling at all. But honestly, the biggest problem with the game overall is right there on the title screen. Sonic the Hedgehog 4. I think there might have been some leeway on these issues if it was just a mobile platformer like originally planned. But because Sega wanted to make it a numbered entry, that changes the scope altogether. Now the game has massive expectations thanks to the previous games that were numbered, and compared to those, yeah, no. Sonic 4 doesn't cut it and leaves a very bad taste in my mouth. Sonic 4 as a whole is just a mess. It has no idea what it wants to be, with the mishmashing of ideas from all over the franchise without feeling cohesive, while at the same time never clinging to its own identity. The control makes the game more frustrating than it needs to, no reason to explore, it doesn't have the same enjoyment as any of the classic series. The only new thing I say that works is the tag mechanic, but even then it doesn't excuse the level design being so backwards. If I had to pick one of the episodes, I think I would give it to Episode 1, because while I was bored throughout it, it didn't actively make me mad like the bosses, levels, or special stages did in Episode 2. Episode 2 in general does have some big improvements, but for every step forward, it feels like there were 4 steps back. But even then, I wouldn't give either game the time of day, honestly. Look, as games by themselves, they're passable at best. But 4 keeps trying to copy Sonic 1 and 2, which are significantly better games, and I don't think Sonic 4 provides anything you can't get from those titles. Adding that 4 onto the title was probably the biggest mistake they could have made for this game. And a title that people were excited for now lives in infamy. If people even remember it to begin with. I know that might have been a brutal one, and hey, if you do like the game, props to you, but I just don't think it holds up that well, especially compared to the other titles in the series. Let's put it like this, in the Mania trailers, there is no mention, wink, nod, or anything to Sonic 4, which kinda says it all. Well, we only got one more stop on this adventure. With Dimps not being able to do the job, Sega brought in the fans for their help. Next time, we're gonna be looking at Sonic Mania. And don't worry, I'm covering the Plus content as well. I'll see you then.